𝗙𝗪𝗓, you kind of talked a little bit about post-COVID.
Yeah.
So tell us, what are the changes you've seen in the consumer travel behavior, especially in context to long haul, and if there's any special things that you've seen in context to the United States?
Yeah, sure. No, I think it's a good question as well. But before I go there, I have a better solution for Jonathan. Because the fire is definitely not going down, as I was just explaining earlier as well. I think there is a very strong business case for you to go back and put it forward for expansion of capacity and get us more and more visas. And and maybe we can just be. I know 10 years has a lot of benefits attached to it, but maybe, and there are many other countries have also done it. Maybe short-term tourist visa, if that can be quick. Maybe that could be one potential innovation that can come in as well. But I think, and a lot of that is, by the way, happening. Jonathan, I wanted to say that on record as well. The good news is that the travel overall is growing in India. And the international travel is not necessarily growing at the cost of domestic, because the cohorts are very different, right? And and the 50 million, and there is another 200 million who are waiting to travel as well. So there is more and more travel, and the foreseeable future, if country continues to keep growing at the pace that it's growing, the demand is only going to go in one direction, which I think should be overall good news, and we should be gearing ourselves to sort of manage that, including all of us as well, right? So now coming back to your question, Shima. So in terms of consumer trends, especially post-COVID, the first thing that I alluded to. There's clearly more desire to travel more, right? So the number of, and the metric that we sort of sometimes look at that is that the number of trips, the average number of trips that we used to see from an Indian traveler used to be 1.5 or 2, has gone to about 4 now in a year, right? So, and when you sort of do different sort of data cuts and all, you see a lot of the people, and this is the cohort that I was mentioning, they end up doing some 7-8 trips in a year as well, right? So that definitely is one clear trend that we see. The second thing, which is very interesting and maybe a little bit nuanced, is that we are becoming a lot more adventurous in terms of exploring new things. Let me explain you by giving one example. So it's not necessarily that I think someone alluded to that $120-$150 sort of market. And that market, even for outbound, people are looking for, let's say, for example, homestay, the villas and the apartment kind of stay, the stay options as well. Not necessarily any conventional. Again, I don't think the occupancy levels for the hotels is degrowing, because the overall demand is growing. It's sort of and more supply coming, and that is the alternative accommodations are coming into the picture as well. And third, I would say one of the important sort of trends that we've also seen is that people are becoming a lot more sort of quality conscious now at every segment, and just with the desire to have better experience. So call it premiumization, or call it just the upgrade. Or I would actually like to put it more the desire for better quality experience. So people are definitely looking at a better experience, and someone was so right when he was mentioning, in fact, yesterday we were having a discussion in another forum where this was pointed out as well, that there may be, digitization might have helped the accessibility, the booking, the planning, etc. very, very convenient. But the actual travel experience, there is a lot of headroom for improvement, starting from reaching at the airport to going through the security, going through the immigration on the way back, or going out, and the airline experience and overall, right? And I'm very cognizant of the fact that I say that everyone in the industry has gone through really, really tough times, and everybody is getting themselves up to improve the experience, including the hospitality, including all the premium hospitality players and so on. So I can tell you there is definitely desire, and there is investment going behind it as well. It's going to take a little bit more time, but I think there is tremendous amount of headroom for improvement there. So these are some of the trends that we've seen.
Thank you very much. Because I think one's seeing that across the board, everywhere. Even when you look at domestic travel today, people just want to do better than what they want and done. And Harvinder, coming to the aviation scene, I mean, you guys are on a good spot. There's never a ticket available, that's for sure. But have you seen any new trends like what Rajesh talked about in terms of the consumers? What are you seeing, for the US? What is the demand like?
Yeah, so first I think I'll allude to what Mr. 𝗵𝗏 said in terms of the open skies. For us, United as an American carrier, I think we have the intent. We were flying 4 flights a day. The idea was to bring it to the 5th and then eventually to 6th and 7th. But unfortunately, 2 things happened. First, the COVID, and then what we were doing is we were still flying through COVID for the repatriation flights and everything. So we were doing full schedule during COVID. But after that, the Russian airspace. So we can't really use the Russian airspace being an American carrier, and that's what restricted us to back to 1 flight at this point of time. So the intent is that I hope things get better in the future and we fly more. Coming back to your question, Ksheema, so the first thing is the business in all the segments has come back. So what we really look at in terms of the numbers, we've seen the business which is completely coming back. The second observation from the airline perspective is that the booking patterns have changed. So what I really do on a regular basis in terms of what we see, and we all know, we've always known Indian market as a very late booking market. But now what we have seen is, if I look at and what I measure it by is day of departure. So if I really look at day of departures, let's say 0 to 20, we have about 20% of the bookings happening at this time. And if I look at, let's say, further on 20 to 60, that's about 30%. It has never happened in the past. People really book late in India. And then I'll jump on to 90 days to 120 days, which is again 16 to 17% bookings. So that is actually changing. The pattern is changing. People are planning in advance, and it's a mix of segments. There's leisure, there is business as well. And that is also kind of forcing us to look at how we manage our inventory. And these are the conversations we're having in terms of how we open and close inventory. And the other factor is, all through the segments, across the board, we've seen the yields are going up. So the average fare has gone up, the yields have gone up. As Rajesh was saying, that people want to spend, they are willing to experience the premium, including the premium travel. And that is actually pushing the yields up. So we're very happy in that sense because the market patterns are changing and the spending habits are also changing.
Thank you. One thing we noticed is that I've heard from other airlines is this whole, wanting to travel premium has become really that's your first choice for a lot of people, which wouldn't have happened before. You're in agreement with that, right? Yeah. One question, which is really again a pet question for me, is that AI is here. It's not coming. It's here, and it's here to stay. It's going to really impact our industry. And one of the challenges we find is, and that, is curating itineraries for long haul, especially the United States, is very complex. What are the new improvements or the new things that you're doing at Make My Trip so that you are able to give this, a really seamless experience to this customer who is really growing? They want all kinds of travel, which you just said.
Really well to figure out how to recommend really micro experiences or very quirky things. So just to give you an example, of course there's New York and Empire State Building, but for example in Philadelphia, you can go to a museum where they have Einstein's brain. That is a very quirky micro experience that I think can really add to someone really feeling like they're seeing something special. Near Pittsburgh, and I was in Pennsylvania not too long ago, so Andy Warhol's gravesite is outside of Pittsburgh, and people leave cans by his gravesite. In other parts of America, there is where we have a dog registry for purebred dogs, and you can go there. Anyway, in so many places around the country have these micro quirky experiences, which I think really have fascinated my family and I as we drove across the country, and I think people can add a tremendous amount of value through thinking of curating those sorts of things.
And I think that's really the demand now, and so even India is gorgeous, right? We have gems and gems and gems, and some of them really hidden. And this whole demand where we keep talking about from the outbound perspective about, hey, we want to go beyond the regular gateways. We also want to push business beyond the regular high seasons. So what are the plans that MOT is MOT planning new itineraries to attract this American customer, planning to do new things? Love to hear from you on that.
So I think this is a very vital and fundamental question. And I think we are perhaps not getting to the core of it. So for the past couple of months, I've been doing a lot of work on how to, and consulting different industry sources to get data and see how things are panning out. Rajesh had in his opening statement said as to how India was growing and domestic consumption and, the ability to pay is increasing. So all of that is translating into more amount of travel. So the starting point is that if we take the average of the past few years on how the inbound has grown, and if you also look at how the domestic travel has grown, and then you counterpose it with the supply side that we have today, because at the end of the day, the basic building block of tourism is on the supply side. So when we put that together, I think we had some really interesting and a little bit startling numbers. Because today, if you look at 2024, and just working on the growth rates that are there, I'm not putting too many numbers so that I don't want to take it away from the idea. Today we have, in a branded room segment, we have 0.18 million rooms. And just looking at the demand that we have today, we should be having 4.4 million rooms in addition to the 1.8 that we have. And if we look at the unbranded segment, we have 2.5 million rooms. And we should be having an additional 2.8 million as of today. And when you go on to 2029, you will, if it's a business as usual case, and if we think what is in the pipeline and how things are going to work, we will probably reach 0.24 million by 2029. And you would by then need to have 0.85 million additional rooms. And for the unbranded category again, you will have 2 million rooms which will be built by 2029, including cumulatively those that exist, and you would need to have an additional 6.5 million. So basically what it means is that, of course, these numbers are still being crunched and we're trying to figure it out, but I wanted to leave that point out, is that unless we increase the supply side, all of this talk of we get more people from the US, from France, from whatever it is, it all rests on our ability to create capacity to host the people. We need to not only cater for people who come from abroad, we also need to cater to increasing demand that is coming up domestically. And therefore, I think the government should also look at seeing what is the best way to, take people past that tipping point to ensure that investments flow in. But I think the industry also should stop thinking incrementally, because I think if we have to, all of us are, I often face this question. People say, why is tourism not delivering for India? Why is it not yet the full-fledged engine of growth that it should be? And people, sort of compare it to other countries. One, ballpark way to compare is Egypt. If you look at, we get 14 million inbound, Egypt gets 15 million inbound. Per thousand of population, we have 0.02 rooms, whereas Egypt has 4.8 rooms per thousand of population. And if you add our domestic demand to it, that number will actually, the delta will be much higher. So I think what we really need to do, and I think in the next 4 years or 5 years that we have within the framework of this government, is first we need to open up these bed and breakfast and non-traditional sources of accommodation, villas, etc., so that we create supply in quick time, and we are also able to create profitable avenues within the economy. And the second is, I think we should go hell for leather, and we must do a lot of investment to get into hotel space, and we need to work with states on policy reforms. We need to work with the industry. And I think all of us should actually put on our thinking hats to see that if we have to make this happen for India, what is it that we need to do? And I think Jonathan should also help us in trying to get the best investors to come into India, because the opportunity is huge. And I think my sense is that it's not going to be met completely from the domestic side alone. So I think we need to look at large-scale investments which will flow in from all parts of the world, and perhaps US will be the first preferred partner.
Thank you very much, Suman. Really quickly, just two short questions. Harvinder, talking about, everybody talks about tier 2 cities and this region's better and that region's better. Which are the regions is where you see maximum growth?
So I think we, as an airline, what we look at is basically our behind and beyond traffic. And what we look at here is, apart from the point-to-point traffic, there are a lot of other, so it's all scattered, whether you go to US or whether you come back to India, or whether it's originating out of India. So if your regular ones is basically Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and then beyond that is, apart from that is Calcutta, Chennai, and if you get to the tier 2 cities, there is also Kochi and Pune. So all these sectors, actually all these cities are contributing to the entire traffic. The good part is that when I said earlier that the business has come back, from the corporate side, we have, if I really look at the segments, all the industries are picked up. So major ones are IT, finance, energy sector, pharma sector, they have really picked up, and they're coming from all over India. The other good part is that from tier 2 cities, we have a lot of SMEs which have actually come up. So personally, I don't look at, if you really do segmentation, you do it for the business purpose. But my personal view is that you cannot isolate the two, because if I'm appealing to a corporate customer, let's say a CEO who's traveling on United Airlines, and if they're happy with the service, I'm sure they will then ask their family to travel on leisure on us. So then we don't take it in isolation, but just to kind of give you the view, both the sectors are growing very well, and the SME sector from the tier 2 cities is growing very well. So if you're able to kind of tap this business well, if you're able to cluster this business very well, there is huge opportunity there, because that's the business, apart from the larger corporates who are actually sitting there, and expanding their footprint all across the US. The smaller companies are doing a lot of recce now. They are going, they're expanding, they're looking at business opportunities here and there. And that's where the opportunity lies. If we can cluster them together, that's also a good opportunity to get the high-yield business. So there are smaller companies where a few employees are there, only few people are traveling, but those are the people who are actually paying very high fares to us as well. So in short, this is where we stand.
All a good story. Everything's growing. So Jonathan, the last one for you. Give it a wrap now. How important is India? Not just from a tourism, but also from the perspective of the commercial activity which you look after. Are we going to get lots and lots of investment?
India is actually already getting a huge amount of investment from the United States, particularly in the services area. So U.S. companies now already employ more than 3 million people in India, and that number just continues to grow year after year after year. The value to an American company of working with India and in India, working with Indian employees, the great education system for a lot of Indian graduates, the ability to integrate in a global supply chain. All these things, American companies are coming here, discovering that India is a great source of partnerships and employees. So already India is an important market from an investment perspective. It's also becoming more important from an investment perspective, both inbound on manufacturing, and we're seeing more and more interest from that perspective. But of course also Indians are investing more and more in the United States. A couple months ago, Ambassador 𝗙ecie led a delegation of investors from India to the largest investment conference in the United States called Select USA Summit. The Indian delegation, and delegations come from all over the world, the Indian delegation by far was the largest delegation. Not only was it the largest delegation this year, but it was the largest delegation ever. And we anticipate that will just continue to grow. And so you can see more and more that the relationship and the integration between our two economies are going to be even more important going forward.
Well, thank you very much for that. I really could just say that when it comes to tourism, we are the darling right now. So let's all leverage it. Anybody here who's doing... Yes, Ajay?
Question, but there's question time.
Yeah, do we have a few minutes?
Sorry, 𝗙ecie𝗵𝗶 𝗨𝗀 𝗪𝗓. This is for you as much a question as a comment. And this might come as a surprise to some part of the audience here. It still does not make commercial sense to buy land and build a hotel in India. There's no concept of ROI. Unless you're building assets for the long term, it's tough to get investment in.
As an industry, we've been asking sometimes respectfully and politely, sometimes more vociferously, for infrastructure status that comes from the government of India, which gives people longer time to repay capital and better interest rates. We've even had sessions with the Parliamentary Committee on Tourism and big hearings with all the bank chairmen, etc., but we haven't got what we've been asking for. And I'm hopeful with all this focus, greater focus on tourism, that we get somewhere. Thank you.
That's clearly the challenge that we have. There are two pieces to resolve it. The first is availability of land. And that means that you will have to work with the states to have this policy of land reservation for hotels and not bundle it along with shopping malls and retail offices, etc. Because what you can pay depends upon the class of investment that you make. So I think that is something that we need to work on. It doesn't mean that all the business elements will be within the city and the hotels will be out of the city. The second is infrastructure status, which is very vital. This was there earlier, but again, it had a ticket size of 200 crores of investment. Only those which were higher than that would sort of qualify. Now, recently that has come back again, but it says there is a clause, limiting clause, which says that it will apply to only those places with a population of less than 1 million. So typically that is not, catching the demography that we really want, the cities that we really want. So I think the challenge is for us to see as to how we can expand this envelope and perhaps make it, blanket applicable elsewhere to see what that is. So that is one of the things that we've been taking up with the Ministry of Finance. But I think the industry should also come together and we must have a common minimum program to say that these are some of the things that we need to achieve to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shima, for moderating this.
India and the US are natural allies, and our strength is across different sectors, from trade to industry, commerce, technology, education, etc. But tourism is also very strong now, but we have a lot more headroom which we can capture by increasing the potential between both the countries. One choke point that we have today is with the visa restriction for Indians traveling to the US. And the second is the direct flight connectivity. These are areas that we need to work for both the governments and for the industry to be able to make it easier for us to tap into the potential that the sector offers.